Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Miami Hurricanes end the 2023 season going down to Rutgers in the Pinstripe Bowl. Want to hop on, talk a little bit about what we saw from the Miami Hurricanes in this game, evaluate the quarterback play, talk about some positions and areas of concern that Miami needs to clean up heading into that 2024 year. Before we get into it, I just want to preface with this was a bowl game Miami went into with a lot of NFL talent that was opted out for this game. And we hopped on about 24 hours ago and talked about some of the things that we were looking for. And of course, you want to win this football game. Don't get me wrong, but if you're a Miami fan, you're evaluating a lot more than just what the final score reads on the scoreboard. So I want to hop into talking about some of the things that we were looking for, talking about some things that need to improve on in 2024. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. A shout out to the Miami fans. You guys have been extremely supportive of the boys, whether we're talking the recruiting trail, the transfer portal. Can't thank you guys enough. Through the highs, the lows of the season, you guys have continued to support us. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, your big takeaways from this game. And without further ado, let's hop in and first start with probably the biggest evaluation point we were looking at, and that is the quarterback play. A guy like Jacurri Brown, who hadn't played the whole 2023 season, thrusted into the starting role. Talking about what we saw, obviously it was a rocky start for Jacurri Brown, and a lot of that had to do with just how the game was going, right? Rutgers dominating the time of possession. I think Miami only ran 3 plays in the first quarter of this game, so kind of hard for a guy like Brown to get into his rhythm. But when you did see this offense find its rhythm, there were some things that you really liked what you saw from Jacurri Brown. And I might as well preface this with, this is a Rutgers defense that has been phenomenal all year in the Big Ten. One of the more stingier defenses that you saw on all. After that interception, that was an ugly one. I thought Jacurri Brown played all right. And a couple of the things that you saw from him are things that, yeah, we can build around a guy like Jacurri Brown. Now, that's not necessarily me saying that Miami shouldn't be going after Cam Ward in the transfer portal, because I'm on record saying this team can be very special with an elite quarterback in 2024. That being said, if you're Miami, you're potentially looking at a guy like Jacurri Brown being the dude in 2025. There's some of the things that you saw that, I think were really exciting was the arm talent is clearly there. Going back to the first play of the line of scrimmage, when he goes after that deep post and just misses Jacoby George on that route, you see the easy arm talent, the easy velocity that he's able to generate. Not a lot of quarterbacks at the college football level have the arm talent and the arm strength that a guy like Jacurri Brown has. And yes, you have to clean up some of the accuracy. You have to clean up some of the pocket management. That type of stuff comes with time. And I think a lot of Miami fans know that he was repping the scout team most of the year. So are you necessarily surprised that a second-year quarterback that spent the majority of the 2023 season taking scout team reps doesn't look like he has a ton of seasoning on him? You're not that surprised. But there are tools that Jacurri Brown brings to the table. Obviously, his athleticism, extending plays out of the pocket, but also the arm talent. That's extremely exciting. I go back to a guy like Xavier Restrepo running that post corner to the front hash of the end zone, front pylon of the end zone, I should say. That was an extremely special throw by Jacurri Brown that not a lot of quarterbacks can make. Kind of a flick of the wrist, puts it right on the money. Those are the tools that you kind of want to see if you can develop if you're Miami. Now, you're having that discussion with Jacurri Brown in terms of what do you want this quarterback development to look like? Are you okay sitting out in the 2024 year, playing that quarterback 2 spot? But at the end of the day, I think a lot of Miami fans recognize that there are some weapons to work with in terms of what Jacurri Brown brings to this Miami offense. Now, a couple of things you got to work on. Pocket presence processing, I thought was pretty good in the second and third quarter in terms of stepping up, manipulating pockets. You saw, one time they rushed 3, dropped 8, and he kind of ran into a sack there. That type of stuff happens with the young quarterback that hasn't played much. Those are all stuff that you can kind of fix. And Shannon Dawson has a strong track record of developing that type of stuff in quarterbacks. Now, looking at some of the pieces around him, the offensive line clearly missed Matt Lee and Javion Cohen. And not to really drag Mario Cristobal, but Lou Cristobal out there, kind of borderline on a liability at points. I mean, that 4th and 2 where he completely gets blown up, gives up the negative play, they get off the field, kind of lose the game there. It felt like you miss a guy like Matt Lee and Javion Cohen, not only establishing the run game, but also in pass protection as well. Now, you look towards the 2024 season, I'm really high on a guy like Matthew McCoy potentially being a plug-and-play starter on that inside. A guy like Zach Carpenter going to be a plug-and-play starter at the center position. You feel pretty good about what it's going to look like in 2024, but for evaluating the offense here, you certainly missed 2 NFL caliber offensive linemen on the inside of that offensive line. Now, the wide receiver position, kind of a mixed bag. Shout out Xavier Restrepo, setting the single season record for the Miami Hurricanes in terms of receptions, goes over 1,000 yards. He is so impactful to this offense. And whoever's playing quarterback next year, that's going to be his best friend. This is a guy that can create separation at all 3 levels of the field, consistently gets open, catches footballs. He's going to be one of the best receivers in college football in 2024. Now, a guy like Jacoby George, who let's just call it as it is, a stinker of a game, right? Drops, personal fouls, holding penalties. He negatively impacted that game for the Miami Hurricanes in a meaningful way. He knows that. The coaching staff knows that. That is not to kind of count out Jacoby George and what he can be in 2024. Just this was not his best game. Now, a couple of young guys that kind of flashed for me, Isaiah Horton. There are some bones to Isaiah Horton. He creates separation. He works the boundary extremely well. I thought really you saw some impact after the catch, but more importantly from what I saw was kind of being a little bit of a polished route runner and presenting himself to the quarterback. And when the quarterback was trying to extend plays, Isaiah Horton coming back, working back, kind of working that scramble drill. There are a lot of things you like about Isaiah Horton. I think he's going to be a guy, if you're a Miami fan, you're kind of looking forward to seeing what the development looks like for him in that 2024 year. Wish we got to see a little bit more Ray Joseph. Just didn't get to see much. Optimistic about the wide receiver room, especially when you're talking about a guy like Xavier Restrepo, who I truly think is one of the most underrated wide receivers, not only in the ACC, but the entire country. Now, flipping sides to the defense, you got to give credit to Rutgers. I mean, that is a very good offensive line with a very good running back in Kyle Monangai. The thing that stuck out to me the most was, one, you came out flat. I mean, Rutgers just kind of drove the ball kind of down your throat for the first 2 drives, went up 14-0 awfully quickly. Now, really happy that the defense was able to battle back, but they lost the line of scrimmage in a meaningful way in the first quarter. And when you have a first quarter that kind of reads, Rutgers has 11 minutes of time possession, Miami has 4 minutes, Rutgers has run 30 plays, Miami's ran like 9 plays, that's as bad as you can script a first quarter. You can't come out flat like that in 2024. The next thing I noticed was the depth on that defensive line. I know you had some opt-outs. It's just not there. I mean, a true freshman like Ruben Bain, shout out. He is such a stud. You guys know how I feel about him. He played pretty much every snap. And you look at the other elite defenses across the country, they can rotate guys in and they have their stars, but they recognize even their stars need some breaks and need to stay fresh throughout 4 quarters. A guy like Ruben Bain didn't come off the field, and I think that kind of speaks to the depth of this Miami Hurricanes defensive line. And I get you don't want Ruben Bain sitting out that much, but you got to keep him fresh. And you saw in that 4th quarter when Miami needed a stop to get off the field and give their offense the ball back, they couldn't find those stops, and it seemed like they were just tired. Rutgers was leaning on them all game, and if Miami's deep around that defensive line, you probably get a little bit of a different script in that 4th quarter. But I think the lack of depth hurt them in a meaningful way. And they did get bullied for a portion of that game up front. Now that's getting addressed, right? You have a guy like CJ Clark coming in from NC State, obviously Justin Scott, Armando Blunt coming in that 2024 class that you feel pretty good about. Looking at the linebacker spot, Francis Mauigoa is a dude. He's going to be one of the more influential. Him, Ruben Bain, those are the building blocks in 2024 for that defense. That front 7, I think, is going to be good. I'm not too concerned about that front 7. Now, the thing I'm looking at is that secondary, and it started to play better, but I'm not really sure what was the deal with the soft coverage in the first quarter. I mean, Rutgers has shown, and after watching a lot of Rutgers this season as a Big Ten fan myself, Rutgers hasn't really showed you the ability to vertically hurt you with their passing attack. Yet Miami was kind of just playing extremely off and kind of giving them the stuff underneath. Now that fixed going into that second quarter and the second half. That being said, way too off of coverage. And I know you're out Kitchens and you're out Williams, and some of that experience in the safety room wasn't there. Once that got cleaned up, you feel pretty good. I thought Jacurri Brown, Jadias Richard, they're going to be good football players. Again, kind of thrusted in there maybe a little bit more early than you would want if you're Miami. If I'm Miami, I'm still looking at adding maybe a defensive back or two into that secondary just to kind of supplement that young talent with some experience. Now, my overall takes on the game, and you can kind of see this when you look at kind of the team stats, when you give up a block punt for a touchdown, when you lose the turnover battle like Miami did, when you have this stupid personal fouls like you have, that's a recipe to lose a football game. And you see on the screen, Miami had 311 yards, Rutgers only had 292. So it's Miami, I mean, in the second and third quarter, I thought was clearly the better football team. But when you have a first quarter that looks like that, and you give up a block punt that kind of completely flips the momentum of that football game, it's hard to win football games like that. And I think what you're frustrated with Miami, and if you're a Miami Hurricane fan, is you see that all too much. This team is too talented to be losing these kind of games and making the mistakes that they make in the big moments. Mario Cristobal going into 2024, you're pushing the chips in. Like you got the talent now. You have the experience now. You've gone through the growing pains. In 2024, that stuff needs to get cleaned up in a massive way. Looking towards the transfer portal, and this is something that we'll talk about over the next couple of weeks. Few things that I want to see added. I got them in my notebook here. One, on that defensive line, you still want some big bodies, right? You saw Rutgers, who has a very big physical offensive line, just kind of lean on this Miami Hurricanes defense, especially in the middle. Like they just don't have those two gap guys that can sit on double teams and free up some other players. These think of a guy like CJ Clark certainly going to play that role. You want more of those bodies in on that defensive line. The second spot I'm looking at is probably in that defensive back room. It's a young room. I think it's a talented room, but I think you want to have some more experience, especially when you lose your two starting safeties that have played so much football for Miami the last couple of years. Those are the two spots where if I'm Miami, that's where I'm looking in the transfer portal. Obviously, a quarterback heading into 2024, a frustrating end for the Miami Hurricanes in the 2023 season. That being said, Miami fans know how I feel about 2024. I think the future is extremely bright. You got to clean up some of the things that are losing your football games in 2023. But if you do that, this team's going to be dangerous in 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. We'll have plenty of transfer portal news over the next couple of weeks for Miami. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.